Hello everybody, I hope your week has been going awesome so far. Personally, I've been dealing with some energy fluctuations, which can be frustrating, but I try to remember just to take advantage of the energy I have when I have it and actually get something done. And then when I don't beat myself up over it and just kind of give myself a little bit more patience, because if you get into a vicious cycle of being sad about it and beating yourself up over the fact that you don't have the energy to do something, it makes it that much harder when you have energy to convince yourself to do it. So normally what I do is, it may be a super lazy day where I'm just daydreaming and thinking about projects that I want to get done, and I try to do that in a productive manner. I don't just think about it wistfully, but I actually think about the process and try to make myself think, okay, I need to sketch that out. I want to do that in watercolor, or no, that would be way better in acrylic. And I actually do painting and drawings in my mind, which is a good exercise. I feel like it gives me a little more oomph when I have the energy to get back to my easel and actually work on a physical project. Or maybe I have just a little more energy and do some sketches like I've been doing to plan my future paintings and get just a little bit more of a hard idea on paper what I want to do. But for today, we are going to focus our energy on pumpkins, this painting next to me. Last time we put the details into the leaves and got them all finished up. The pumpkins need the same treatment. We've left them just as blobs, and we need to add in a little more detail and give them their stems to make them look more pumpkin-like. This is the second to last session for this painting. We are almost done at the finish line of having a completed project. That being said, let's create.
All right, here we go with the pumpkins. We are back to using a nice thick round brush and just a darker color for the lines. All we're doing is going back over those lines that we left in the first place. We're kind of thickening them up because we will be adding a even darker crease to add where the pumpkin's actually going in all the way. This just helps add some shadowing to what we're doing. Again, same as before when we were originally putting these pumpkins in. You can see I'm getting a little fiddly there, and you see how the line's not quite as straight as it needs to be. So those long, confident strokes are going to be important again. But as you can see with acrylic, and this is why we let those bottom layers dry, like I've said, I was able to go back in with just a clean brush and some water, and I was able to fix that line and pull the paint right back up before it dried. That's exactly why I let those bottom layers dry. But easy peasy, moving on. And we're just gonna keep doing this to all of the pumpkins. You can see I've already got my darker lines in for the dark pumpkins. I don't have a video of that, but it's just the same exact technique that we are doing here. And as I'm doing this, I'm just thinking about vanishing lines. And again, reference photos, reference photos, reference photos. They are so important, especially when you are doing a new subject that you haven't done a lot. When you see people painting from their imagination, or they're like, yeah, I didn't use a reference photo for this, that's because they've probably done it a lot. So don't get too hard on yourself. Give yourself plenty of reference, because you have to build up that mental library of what you are doing. And the greatest trick to that is to look at those photos and paint or draw exactly what you see, not what your mind wants there to be when you are first starting, because we think we know what something looks like and we try to correct it, but then it looks a little off. We go and look at a reference photo and we're like, oh, that's not how that's actually shaped. So give yourself that little bit of leeway and go ahead and use what is actually there, not what you think should be there. That's an entirely different thing. I'm using green for these lighter pumpkins. Again, this are more of those kind of like white green pumpkins. And then we're gonna add in not just the lines, but a little bit of shadowing. I'm going to call it distressing. You can see how I added that green in just a little bit more. And here we go with the darker color on this other pumpkin. And that's just to give the color more depth. I don't want any flat color. It just makes them look more interesting, more realistic. It's kind of just more fun for the eye to look at. So same thing with these pumpkins. Not a lot of rhyme or reason. This isn't really shadowing. It's just differentiation in the color of the pumpkin itself, which if you look at actual pumpkins, you'll see they do naturally occur that way. And then here we go, like I said, with those really dark lines, and that's just really to define the creases. Don't be afraid to go really dark, especially because when you're looking at a painting, depending on the style you're going for, you want to be able to make that impact from further away. I have this tendency, and I've been trying to get a lot better at it, but I'll get really fiddly up close and I'll look at it super detailed, and for one style that really works if you're going for kind of, a hyper realism. But if you're just going for more of an impression of it and something that looks really good, take a step back from your painting and look at it. Can you actually see what you've been working on? Do you even see the detail work? Did you go dark enough? Do you have enough contrast happening? I struggle with that sometimes. I'm like, yeah, these are totally different. And I try to get the really subtle differences in shading, when realistically, I can't see that when I step back and observe the painting as a whole, especially on a large canvas. And I want to make sure that my painting is making an impact, not just when I get really tiny and up close next to it, but from further away as a visual overall. Alright, that is all the shading and coloration that we need on the pumpkins. We'll be adding in some highlights later. Let's put in those stems. I have just moved on to a flat brush. We are using just a nice light kind of cream colored tan. And with the stems, have fun with it. Again, this is where pumpkins are different. It depends on how they grew. It depends on where the person cut it. You can have some short ones, some really long ones. Also depends on the angle that they're coming at from. So really think about that and how you're going to attach it to the pumpkin. Kind of like I was talking before about this big guy here. It took me a minute to figure out how I wanted to do the stem because I really wanted to see the pumpkin from the side. So I didn't really want the stem coming down and over the side because I wouldn't see that from the pumpkin at this angle. So I just put in the stem where I knew it would go and where I would see it. And that's what we're going to fix with the kind of opaque highlights. I'll round out the top there and bring it more to the stem so it'll look like it's supposed to. Now this one is a smaller flat brush. For detail work, I always try to make sure that I'm grabbing a brush that really does come to a fine point. Some of your flat brushes, may be really bushy, and that's okay. That one that I was using for the stems was. This one though is really fine and comes to like a perfect chisel point, which is what I really like for detail work. So don't be afraid to try out different brushes. If a technique isn't working for you, it could be how you're doing the technique. Everything needs practice, but always take a look at your tools and what you're trying to do. There is no shame in switching out tools and just figuring out what makes sense to you. Something that works for somebody else and they're like, oh yeah, I really love this brush for this. You may pick it up and even after hours using that brush, you're like, I just don't get it. That's okay. Maybe try picking up a different brush and seeing if that makes more sense. We all see the world differently. We hold them differently. The way that we move the brush is different. So don't be afraid to give yourself that leeway and going, okay, I'm just going to try a different tool. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it won't. Maybe you realize, no, I need to do the other one. But by trying something different, you'll realize how you were working that previous brush. Just some things to think about. Really light tapping motions are all I'm doing here, and I'm just adding in details. Same thing as the details on the pumpkins. Really kind of sketchy with it, and everything in nature, there's a certain amount of a pattern, with the roundness of the pumpkins and the way that they grow in. But then when you're looking at texture, you just don't want to get too stiff or too straightforward with it because that's what's going to make it look unnatural. So try to randomize that just a little bit. You can see that they are already coming together just with this little bit of detail. We didn't have to do much. And that's something to remember when you're painting something is, again, these layers just really come together and are what make the details happen. If you stop too early, you're going to be really disappointed. People get really afraid when they feel like their painting is in the quote-unquote ugly stage. Move past that. You've got it. Keep working on it. And a good rule of thumb is, hey, if you don't like it the way it is, keep working on it till you do. The worst you're gonna do is push it to a point where you don't like it. But if you weren't happy with it anyway, all it was extra practice for you, right? We are back to a round brush here, adding in the highlights. This is where you need to choose where your light source is coming from. For me, I'm choosing for my light source to come from all of the different circles with the trees. These are like little portals. That's also what's going to help give your painting a more cohesive look, is that your light source looks like it's coming from the same place. We don't just want it to highlight the pumpkins and add extra detail. We want everything to look like it fits together. Oh, that is all we are doing today. These pumpkins look really fun. As you can see, just from start to finish, we've added detail and just given them a little extra something to make them pop and really look like Halloween pumpkins. Oh, if you join me next time, we are going to finish this painting up. You should have a completed piece. We'll do the clouds, finish off the portals, and then we're going to move on to something new. Isn't that exciting? I can't wait to see you guys next time. Stay fun, stay creative, and stay healthy. All right, bye.